You're live.
Okay, thank you. And welcome everybody to our virtual Capital Subcommittee meeting. I'm Helen Charlevsky. For those who are watching at home, I'm the chair of the Capital Subcommittee. I'm sorry? Okay. Can mute the phones
on it because I'm not here. He's not here.
Mary Ellen, if you could
hold on. Sorry. Hold on.
Okay, so now we don't get feedback back. Charlie Simmons is well. So let me tell you who's online with us, and for those at home too, because you may not know who CS or BL is or RC. So we have, starting at the top, Robin Coyne with us, Mary Ellen Norman, Carl, who is the Director of Administration and Finance, Deputy Superintendent for Administration and Finance. We have Carla Benka, who's the Vice Chair of the Chair of the Capital Subcommittee of the Advisory Committee, but you also have another title, no?
The Vice Chair of the Advisory Committee.
Yeah, that's what I thought, Vice Chair of the Advisory Committee. We have Superintendent Ben Lummis. We have Matt Gillis, the Director of
Operations.
Thank you. I know what you do, but I wasn't sure in the title. Barbara Scotto of the School Committee, Bob Mullen, working together with Matt, what's your title? I'm sorry.
Rob's a project manager for the school department.
Project manager for the school department. We have Suzanne Federspiel from the school committee. And we have Aaron Cooley, who's calling in, and Charlie Simmons, who is there. Correct, Charlie? Charlie, you have to unmute if you're there. You're there. Okay, great. We're going to go through. So my plan is for our meeting to have a hard stop at 5:30, so school committee members and staff can get a bite to eat between 5:30 and our 6 o'clock meeting. I think what we'll do first is just approve the minutes from the last meeting. I will move them. Do I have a second?
I'll second them.
Great. All in favor? Oh, wait, I have to do roll call. Barbara?
Yes.
Suzanne?
Yes.
And Helen, yes. Okay, that was quick. We're going to go on to the second order of business, the discussion of the well, let me ask if it makes sense. Well, okay, let's do I think we can do this quickly. The second order is the discussion of the fiscal year 2021 Public Buildings Division request for $627,000 increase. Who wants to lay the groundwork quickly? Or do people remember enough about this presentation that, or Charlie, maybe why don't we have you start? Charlie? Well, maybe we won't have you start.
Ellen, he's muted. I can see the little red.
Yeah, I see he's muted. I don't know. Maybe he thought we were going to take longer.
All right, now.
Okay, Charlie?
We could start with the paperwork that I sent in late November.
Right.
Putting in the request. The request was broken into two parts. The first part was what I felt was needed to fully have full complement on the staffing. Based on the buildings that you have now, so you can see me, and what we maintain, and based on the report that was done by the Matrix Company, I feel that we should add $225,000 for personnel. This represents 2 more additional HVAC technicians and 1 electrician. The reason for this is having staff versus using outside contractors is much more efficient and much more cost effective.
Charlie, if I could interrupt you for a second, how many do we have now of HVAC and electricians on
We have
staff?
on staff, we have 3 electricians. Of HVAC, we have 3 positions. I have been unable to fill those positions for quite some time. I have worked with our HR department and the select board's office. It's a question of what people are getting paid versus the outside world. Outside contractors, union wages, are quite a lot more money. And we can't compete with that, including our benefits. What's ironic is I've been on the phone today with probably half a dozen contractors. The union halls are all filling up now with electricians and plumbers because of what's happening. And a lot of people are getting laid off.
Uh-huh.
So
What does that-
HVAC. If I
So-
advertise for 3 HVAC positions right now, I might be able to fill them, even short term. And depending on how the economy goes, I don't want to predict gloom and doom, but I think that there'll be a dip and we will have an opportunity to fill these positions.
So, but what I'm not clear about, are you asking for 5 HVAC positions or 3?
No,
or 2?
I have 3 positions already budgeted. They've been budgeted for several years. I just have been unable to fill them.
So why would 2 more be, why would you do 5 instead of just filling the 3?
In order to do the work of the 3 and potentially these 2 other people, I've been using outside contractors for several years, which has been extremely, extremely expensive. And frankly, the service is not that great. And we've already gone through in the last year 3 companies. And I'm paying approximately $165 an hour right now for the 3rd company. And by pulling it in-house, we have a much better response, much less cost, and we get things done quicker.
The reason I'm pushing back on some of this, Charlie, as you know, our budget is really pretty, not just tight, we don't have money. And to try, this will come out of our school department budget. And
Correct.
I guess what I would prefer, and I'm not sure if we can do that, is to first work with the 3, that you have budgeted, or maybe do 4, to try and cut down on what we're putting over to the building department because we can't afford it. I don't know what others have to say.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with Helen on this, Charlie, a little bit. It's confusing to me. You have a budget that you're paying people for now, the contractors. Can you not just take that budget that you're doing with contractors and hire in-house? Well, it's confusing why you're asking for an additional $225,000 if we're not increasing. And in fact, we might be saving money.
In addition, not to change the subject, but in addition to the personnel item, I'm asking for approximately $400,000 more in repair and maintenance. That'll be used in their outside contractors. What's been happening is I've been unable to maintain the buildings properly and preventative maintenance.
No, I'm aware of that. I thought we'd take the 2 separately, 2 pieces.
Correct. So,
You know,
yes, if I was able to bring people into and have it do it with my own staff, it would be much lot cheaper. The monies that are budgeted, that had been budgeted right now for the positions, the 3 positions, I transferred about 3 weeks ago out of salaries into the repair and maintenance because I've been using outside repair and maintenance, outside HVAC companies. It's been putting a huge strain on my budget. So when I budget, when I plan for this, I'm presuming that the positions will be filled. If they don't get filled, I'm going to have to use outside resources, which is extremely expensive, and it puts a further deficit on the budget.
Yeah, no, I get that.
So are you saying, Charlie, that you have been 3 people short for quite a while? And you
I
have
have.
2 people who've been working. So if you could get a total of 5 people hired now, you might be able to get work done and possibly keep them in jobs once the economy gets better. Am I understanding you correctly?
It's a fair statement.
No, but he
Well,
doesn't. Go ahead.
this is just HVAC. I've asked this year for two HVAC and 1 electrician, just to be clear.
But that's in addition to the 3 positions that you have for HVAC and the 3 electricians. So altogether it would be 4 electricians and 5 HVAC, all for the school buildings?
No, they're split up 25%, 75%. 75% of the salaries paid by the schools, 25% are paid by the town, and then town pays the benefits.
So by hiring these, we will not have to, if in fact you can find people, we will not in fact have to go beyond the budget and pay much more, is what you're saying,
Unless there's some extreme emergency, no, I shouldn't have to.
right? Which might make sense in the long run.
I'm just a little, I would prefer to start with what we have budgeted, maybe add 1 HVAC to catch us up, but it just seems like a lot, a lot of money, 225,000, to add to our budget when we haven't, maybe the 3 positions would be sufficient. I don't know. What do other people think?
Yeah,
If
it feels like we need to fill those 3 positions. So I had thought, Charlie, you were asking for additional money because you didn't have enough money to hire 3 positions.
No, it would be negotiated with the unions, and there'd be an agreement between our HR department and your HR department, and Mary Ellen and Melissa Goff, on the funding for that. And then upcharge at some point in time will be coming because the contract is ending soon. But I don't have that number right now. And that number would have to eventually be built into the budget. There's also just an underlying thing. It's one union. And the problem we might have is if you increase the hourly rate just for the 3 HVAC positions that I have now, the union will probably push back like they've done in the past and say everybody should get the raise. All 14 people should get that increase, which is a lot different than 3.
Well, I don't think we should be discussing, union negotiations here. But I hear what you're saying. It seems to me these are all different classifications and should be considered differently. But that's
Correct.
not negotiating that, and we're not doing that now.
Correct.
I guess, because even if we vote it and you can't hire people, it's not going to happen.
Well, no, it would go into the budget, and I would attempt to hire somebody.
I get that.
If I'm able to, I'd have to use outside resources.
Right. Well,
I'm still confused why we're not hiring people now. We have the 3 openings. Why
We
is
don't
that not?
we don't have to hire enough hourly rate to compete with outside contractors, to compete with the unions of what they pay.
But I don't understand, Charlie, how adding $200,000 to the budget will fix that problem.
That will not fix that particular problem.
Okay.
There's 2 things going on here, what we pay, and this would be the money for the positions. There'd be at some point a discussion about hourly rates in the near future, I hope. My point is, if we don't spend these kinds of money, and they're very, very high, and you use somebody that's on our staff at $35 an hour, we'll say, was spend $165 per hour using outside contractors. And this number could be 3 times, 4 times, 5 times larger than it is now. So I'm doing the best I can with the monies that I have. And I'm trying to keep as much work in-house as humanly possible.
Sure, and we appreciate that. That's exactly the way we would want to go. But I think the problem is bigger than the amount of money we give you. Much bigger. I think that's the smaller part. And I don't know, Carla, if we were to say right now we weren't going to increase this because our budget can't afford it, and later on, you know, we put some money in the budget in September, could we move money into Charlie's account?
I don't know the answer to that. I suspect.
We need town meeting vote to move money into Charlie's account.
May I ask another question?
Sure.
Carla's frozen. Carla, did we get Carla's answer? Because she froze in the middle of her sentence.
I think, and I'd have to check, excuse me, the appropriation conditions. But in terms of when you can add money into accounts or take money out of accounts, there's some fairly rigid regulations for that. In some cases, advisory approves it. In some cases, the select board approves it. But there is a time. Well, first of all, it all depends on when this money is going to get voted. But clearly, if we are able to go through with the town meeting in May or June, you could vote a certain amount of money. We would have a follow-up town meeting, which could include budget adjustments, at which time you could put more money into that account. That I can say with a fair amount of confidence.
And that follow-up one would be when?
It's what we do at the fall town meeting. There's always a warrant article for budget adjustments, and that's sometimes we get a little boost because the health insurance numbers come back lower, or state aid comes back in a little bit higher. It's generally not major changes, but depending on what we are able to get done, if we have an annual town meeting, it could be more substantive changes in November. We've been having lengthy discussions, as I know your school finance subcommittee had yesterday, or the advisory committee, schools committee had with your finance committee about it's almost impossible to plan for operating budgets now because we have no idea what the fallout's going to be, even in terms of what's going to happen to our revenue in fiscal 20, let alone 21. I mean, Mary Ellen can fill you in on that discussion in more detail.
I have a question for Charlie.
Can you stay back a little from the microphone? Maybe that'll be better because it has a ringing.
I have a question for Charlie. Is that better?
Sort of.
It's.
Oh, I see. You can't go any further.
You could broadcast the meeting to the entire EOC if you'd like, or you can be in my ear.
Okay, all right.
So question for Charlie is just for him to repeat that the negotiations for the HVAC position, that's already been negotiated. So he already has the new pay rates. Is that correct, Charlie?
Yes, from the previous contract, yes.
All right.
So go ahead.
So so the 3 that you have, you could hire as many as you have a budget for if you posted today.
Yes.
And then the question I would have is, so what's the increment of my understanding of that 225 was that was 4 positions, not adding salaries to the 3 that exist. Melissa already took care of the salaries of the 3 that exist for next year, so you could hire the 3 at the new higher salary. So you're looking for 7, total complement of 7. Is that correct? That was my understanding a while ago, so I just want to make sure that's correct. If it's not, this is an opportunity to correct that.
The 3 positions that I have now have been budgeted in the budget for the last 3 years. They were added over the last several years with increases in the school and town budget. There was an increase in all tradesmen's hourly rates about 2.5 years ago, which created an entirely new category. With those new numbers, I have still been unable to fill the 3 positions. The 3 HVAC positions still.
Somebody has to turn off their mic because it's interfering.
Right.
Go ahead.
That's better. The 3 existing positions could be advertised today. They've been advertised ongoing. They just took them down again. If nothing else changes, I will always have those 3 positions budgeted.
No, but
And-
Mary Ellen asked a different question.
Okay, maybe I misunderstood that.
So my understanding was that the personnel board increased the pay rate so that the pay rates were then now competitive. And so I understand your FY20 budget not having enough money in it, but you could post 1 or 2, hire 1 or 2 based on what your 20 budget is, but that Melissa made the FY21 budget whole for the new pay rate for 21. But what you just said is that the pay rate is still, even though it's 2 years old, they didn't actually raise it to be competitive.
Exactly. Exactly.
So you have to go back to the personnel board to get the pay rate done again? And negotiations again? Or,
Well, I believe it would probably be an HR-initiated function to begin with, to be negotiated with the unions and eventually go to the HR board. I feel that the numbers should have been higher. The previous director felt that, well, we're sort of splitting the baby, and it had an impact on the overall budget because we took and added the increase to all the other existing people, which was an increase, substantial increase on personnel, my entire budget. Going forward, at a minimum, we need to look at these 3 positions and look at the hourly rate and adjust it accordingly based on what the economy and what the trades are paying, or I will not be able to fill, at a minimum, those 3 positions. That would have to be started with our new HR director. And those discussions have already begun. And there's been meetings with Melissa Goff on it as recently as 2 months ago.
So
And-
Charlie, I know you're not going to be happy with this.
Ellen,
it
make me
seems-
happy.
Huh? I know you want to be happy, but
I'm tired. I've been out straight trying to kill viruses in your schools.
I know, and we appreciate everything you do for us, Charlie. Believe me, that you know, I've sung your praises forever in terms of what you've done, what you've helped us to accomplish, and I certainly want to help you too. But it just, you know, these are hard times for all of us. To take $625,000 out of our budget, we have to find it somewhere. It's not like we have it laying around. And at this point, I don't see how it's, you know, at least the 225 is going to be spent, except with outside contractors. And that's not what you're asking for. It seems to me we could do a budget transfer in November, when you've hired the 3 positions and the 1 electrician. You know, I mean, you already have the funding for the 3 and the 1, right? Correct? How many electricians are there all together?
We have funding for 3 HVAC positions. The funding for the 3 HVAC positions has been in the budget for several years and has not been filled.
Okay, and the
The 3
electrician?
electricians, I have 3 electricians and they're all on staff and those positions are filled. I'm
Okay.
asking for an additional electrician
Right,
for next year.
okay. And 2 additional
Yes.
Yeah, go ahead.
Charlie, is there any point in looking to hire for those 3 positions now? Construction has closed. The economy is not doing so well right at this moment. And if you could hire someone now, maybe they would feel that it was a secure enough position that they would stay.
Yes, it's a
Seems
it's a
to
very
be
valid point.
a good time.
It's on my to-do list to go see the HR director. She's been in and out, and I do need to have a conversation with her. I don't know how this economy is going to be affected short-term, long-term. I'm hearing a lot of things about construction shutting down for some amount of time. And, most union workers doing that kind of work in and out are aware of the seasonal changes. And they're aware as you go into the winter that work slows down, and they budget and plan for it. As you go into the spring, they know that work's going to be picking up. If they are losing their job, even as of this Friday, I know they're not expecting it and they haven't planned for it. So they're going to be in very, very dire straits. And that applies to every trade, even restaurants and so on. So
Right.
I will be definitely seeing our HR director and getting those positions reposted as soon as possible to see what I can get. And yes, there's a good chance I'll be able to find someone right now that doesn't want to go through this again.
Charlie, what if we were to do this? Wait till our next meeting in April, see what's fallen out from all of this, what you've been able to accomplish. And by then our budget will be a little clearer too, hopefully.
Okay.
And let's revisit. Does that sound reasonable to people?
Helen, can I just put in a plug here?
Yeah.
We all know, and you all know, and this is just to remind you that whatever we don't get done in terms of maintenance, deferred maintenance, is only going to cost us more in the future. And, we've certainly had this conversation. Building department is very aware of it. Advisory is very aware of it. We have this conversation on an annual basis with DPW as well in terms of putting enough money in for our roads. And I understand that you've got a tight budget, but I don't see your budget getting any growing by leaps and bounds in the coming years. And these problems are just going to get worse.
No, I don't want to defer maintenance. I agree with you, Carla. But my understanding is also that at the end of the year, sometimes some of Charlie's budget has gone back into the free cash because it hasn't been spent.
I can't, respond to that because I don't have any numbers in front of me.
Yeah, I don't have it either. Unfortunately, Mary Ellen had to go off for a half hour for
Well,
something.
I can comment on that.
Yes.
And I don't have the exact numbers with me. When I do an operating budget, it is not a capital budget. It runs year to year. And I have to estimate most of the jobs. I call up an electrician or plumber and I encumber monies.
Right.
Work needs to be done, physically done before June 30th.
But you
If it
couldn't you schedule them? And
Not for emergency calls. I schedule all PM work. This is for something that gets broken.
uh-huh.
A lot of the contractors, it's very difficult to get billing from them. They don't bill fast enough. I do get on their case quite a bit, but I have to carry over to the next fiscal year enough monies so that I anticipate being able to pay the bill that comes. So if I feel that the bill is $500, my best guess, and I call the contractor $500, I carry over $600 just to be safe. And the bill comes in at $535. That will back as unspent. Now I have 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 bills per year like that. And if you add up all those little amounts, this last year came to about $30,000, but it's about a $2 million budget. It's a very low number. I have asked previous assistant town administrators if I could take that money and carry it forward like a capital account, and I'm told that will never happen because it's an operating budget. Us other cities,
that we've been trying to do for years.
Utilities or whatever, that he's able to use that money to basically catch up with work that hasn't taken place during that
Correct.
particular fiscal year.
correct.
But to see if there's some way that, and by then you'll know if you've been, I see we have Susan Wolf Ditkoff online now with us. And I don't know, let's see, Matt Gillis is still here, Ben Lummis is still here. And who, that's big, R, who is R? Does anybody know who R is? No, that's Rob. Oh, Rob, okay, Rob Mullen. Okay, so we're gonna move on now to the third.
Okay, so we can start with the letter. Let me just doing, and then we can discuss it. I may have to get off just past June in the eligibility period. Sorry, built at that site, or in this case, the Pearson. Back and forth with them for a number of months on this. We gave them a whole bunch of data and resources. They came back with a very early enrollment projection. We gave them some additional information on that. Then they came back on what they saw was the initial utilization or possibility for Pierce based on that initial projection from them. And surprisingly enough to all of us, they actually suggested that with their initial enrollment projection, that Pierce didn't need to be rebuilt. Okay, that we had with one fewer school enough capacity in the district. This was sometime in I can't remember if it was November or December. I think it was December. As you can imagine, this was shocking to all of us. We didn't quite understand it for a little bit, but as we worked with them further, we explained a number of things. Both are overcrowded now, our substandard facilities, the fact that our pre-K have been out of our buildings for many years, the fact that our common areas, hallways to libraries to cafeterias to gymnasiums are over capacity and efficient, for our buildings, the utilization of our buildings. It's also with a more accurate building utilization and their count or experiment for each based on capacity, not on enrollment. What they felt those students, okay, that became 4,464 students. They simply then subtracted their total district, subtracted 4,464 from that total enrollment projection, 725 students. So that was whatever. I guess news for us, but the positive we also got, I say positive news or more information, we got their projections. The Cropper-McKibben forecast came out as well, and both projections, while they differ for Pierce to move towards a 4-section school, primarily because of some of the adjustments we expect in enrollment in North Brookline, but also because of Driscoll coming on as a 4-section. So what it would allow us to do is not, even with Pierce at 4, capacity shift to some degree, which are, at least the Cropper-McKibben forecast shows will happen, is forecast to happen anyway. Let me pause there and see if folks have further questions about that.
I don't have a question about it. I have a comment about it. It
Yeah.
strikes me that it strikes me first that it's a big mistake to do a 4-section school. I mean, a 5-section school, a 4-section school, I'm sorry. Because they are not looking at the kinds of development that we're having in North Brookline. They're not looking at what is online, but not already, not up to the point of having actual plans in the town. I think we're going to have a lot more people in general, but I also think in terms of the Pierce School, what you're talking about is removing a class from every grade. So you are affecting a lot of teachers, making classes more crowded. And I think ultimately it will not work in our favor at all, because we have to get an override. And the Pierce families are very active politically, and they are not going to be pleased with this. And we will run a big risk that the override will not pass, and then we'll be back at step one. And in fact, why would they vote for an override to build a school that doesn't house the number of kids who are going there? So I just think I can't see any reasonableness to this. I understand what you're saying about how they did it and why they're doing what they did, but it seems to me to be completely the wrong thing to do. So that's where I'm standing right now.
Hello.
Suzanne, go ahead.
Yeah. So I don't think I'm thinking the same way Barbara is right now. The state, MSBA, is really talking about what they think they should contribute to peers, but they aren't really making a statement about what else we do in the district. Is that true, Ben?
Yeah, Ben, go ahead.
Wait, I'm sorry, I don't quite understand the question.
Well, I know they're looking at the total enrollment for the district, but they are actually making a statement about peers. They aren't making a statement about whether or not we expand Baker or we have a ninth school. I mean, those are our decisions. They're not contributing to that.
Yes, that's right.
So my thinking is that, we absolutely don't want to turn down the money from the state, MSBA, for peers. That would seem foolish to me. And that, as I was saying earlier, that we're actually talking about a 5 or 10-year plan, which includes a 4-prong approach now, which includes Driscoll, Pierce, probably a ninth school, and something with Baker, so that we will know as we go down the road what additional seats we may need. And we know that we need some additional seats now that they aren't considering. Like, we have a 4-pronged approach involving 4 schools. Again, Driscoll, Pierce, a ninth school. We don't know where that would be or how big. And that's over a 5. That's a 5. As I've said many, many times, I would take a 4-section school over a 5-section school, even though I know it feels uncomfortable to people to think of it peer shrinking. But I think 5 sections are too big for our schools. I'd rather have more smaller schools than to have larger schools if possible.
So I'd like to say a couple words because I agree with Suzanne. I do think, especially on this site, that it is, sorry about that, guys. It is, it's a small site. And to have 5 sections there is, in addition to my feeling that 4 is better than 5, I think the site really can't handle it. And I think that we also need to think about the cost of what this would be on that site as opposed to building a 9th school, which we've been talking about and need. And we need to take seriously also the numbers that we've gotten from 2 different places. Yes, they don't, and they do include in their own way new construction, and they both feel that they have gotten that. Now, I don't know, Ben, if you had the answer from
Publicly, because we haven't shared them with this group yet, but I'm not sure there's a specific question you're looking for, but we do have responses for those questions.
I think the most important one was the impact of new construction.
Okay, 1 second.
And maybe you can share that with us at some point soon.
Yeah, let me just look through this.
You look, in the meantime, I see Carla has her hand up.
New construction, I thought Dave Gasek had some interesting, had an interesting perspective on that in terms of new construction versus the growth of school enrollment. And we know that our own planning department has done studies that shows there's little or no correlation between new construction and a growing school population. Now, I mean, I suppose you could argue that if you build 2,000 three-bedroom units in the town in 1 year, nobody's going to say that's going to have no impact on school enrollment. But as Dave pointed out, the 40B projects that are currently in the pipeline, Hancock Village, we don't know how quickly they're going to move along because we don't know what's going to happen to the economy. On top of which, we know that developers like to build luxury condos for empty nesters. So I guess I'm a little leery about saying, look at all the new construction that's coming online. That's going to have a major impact on our school enrollment numbers. The other thing I would point out, and then I'll be quiet, is the on the town side of things, we are looking at major overhauls of our fire stations because of state requirements, OSHA requirements, the fact that we're getting more female firefighters for whom there are absolutely no accommodations in our existing firehouses. And most importantly, we're looking at the new standards in terms of the environment that our current fire stations create for people who live and work and sleep in them. So that price tag, depending on whether we completely rebuild the station on Babcock Street or try to rehab it, that price tag at the moment is around $25 million. That's definitely an override. If you add that to Newberry, if we end up Newberry ends up going forward and we end up purchasing the land, that's another override. Pierce is a third override, and you know, as people have said, and bears repeating, there's just so much tolerance the good folk of Brookline are going to have for overrides. And so the school needs in this particular case would be competing with some very specific needs of the community in terms of public safety and particularly relating to fire protection.
But you're not posing it as an either or are you?
No, but what I'm saying is if you go on, if you assume that there is going to be a level at which point people are going to start voting down overrides, it's not solely the school projects that we have to be focused on, because there is another debt exclusion override waiting in the wings with the fire stations.
Okay. Ben, did you get that information?
Wait, about, sorry, you want to answer that question? Well, I'll give you, I mean, so what Crawford said, I mean, or honestly, from what Carly just said, is there are a variety of, I mean, the question essentially is, why do they include some of these projects and not others, I think, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And so, and what's the potential impact of those that they haven't considered, okay?
Correct.
There are a few things, I mean, that they said historically building projects take longer than anticipated to begin and then construction. So that's what they, why they, you know, have the time, I think it's what they have just the ones that are fully permitted, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Consistent with what the planning department has also advised us and other, and also other methodologies. In terms of it also have said that the correlation between new housing and school enrollment is not as significant as folks believe or think in sort of a common sense way. People often see what's happening on their street or their neighborhood and extrapolate it across the whole town, even though that's not, you know, sort of just falls into the category of, you know, this is my language, you know, human perception not being accurate to the, you know, the actual experience and data. And then the last piece, shoot, sorry, losing this here. Oh, I know. Is because even though you have increases in may have increases in terms of new folks moving in to housing. Those are being balanced out by other declines. So, they are not sticking with, what they believe to be in their, vast experience, what they, their experience doing many reports for many communities. They also have offered to continue to, I want to make sure I get this right. Well, I'll just say it in sort of summary to, return and give us a sort of a report out on adjustments. I think that's, I don't know if it's on an annual basis or at least this fall with the new data from the fall. So, they're willing to do more work for us if we ask them to do more work for more pay, but they're also have in their contract that they would, as a courtesy, evaluation every year for the next 3 years. So the thing about, so let me pause there.
Oh, so I'm trying to figure out how it's right now 5 o'clock, and we have. When are you going to have to leave us, Ben?
I could leave now, and I mean I need to leave literally as soon as possible. But I'll say one more thing on this is wait, hold on. Getting into the feasibility phase is the crucial next step. We cannot do that with the MSBA and with this project without accepting the enrollment letter as it is. Okay? The feasibility phase and schematic design phase, which follow on, will take some time, as much as 2 years perhaps. And during that time, we'll both get a better indication of what enrollment's doing, but also what can really feasibly fit on that site. I do, in terms of from an education standpoint, I support, 4-section school on that site, and also educationally. I think, if we can, reduce 5-section schools, that's important. Any size school we have will function very, very well. Spruce Corner School is a fantastic school, okay? But they're also, the bigger they get, the more complex they get. So we do have some time to, keep working with the MSBA to sort this out further. But we don't get the opportunity to sort it out any further and see what comes from it without taking this next step.
So let me just, Susan, yeah, I just wanted to say one piece about what he's saying, and then I'll recognize you. We need to get back to the MSBA soon. It would be good to have a signed letter tonight, because if we want to make the April 14th meeting. The following meeting is the end of June, and we'd have to get an extension from them if we were to carry it out further. Well, okay, Susan, you go ahead and then I'll continue.
I think I had 2 quick questions. One was, can you just talk a little bit about the Cropper report and what it said about peers relative to Driscoll? Because I remember, anyway, peers relative to Driscoll and needing capacity. And I guess the second thing is, do we know what the assumptions were on the MSBA enrollment projections? Like, do we know what they did or didn't include?
So on the assumptions, I can answer that, and Ben, you chime in. They do include new growth. They knew what, they do that in every community. And then they added actually 80 kids to our number because of what we came back to them with in terms of new growth. So that's one piece.
Is that permitted only, or does it include things that are not yet permitted?
So they actually don't tell us, excuse me, how they figured that. We've asked that a number of times, and they have said it's a factor that we use across all of our districts over the X number of years we've been doing this. But they actually have never told us exactly what they included or didn't.
So that's complicated, but okay. So can I ask just one other question? It would be incredible. One of the issues with this site from the very, very beginning, since the earliest work that we've done, is what will fit there. and what will fit there in terms of K-8 versus what will fit there like other pieces of our puzzle, more townwide office space, beeps. I mean, it's such a beautiful piece of property that's so walkable. It's right in the heart of town, that it seems a little bit of a shame to only do a 4-section at that incredible location. And so I guess part of my other question is there some way for us, and yet doing a 5, we know, has green space pressures. It has, there were eminent domain conversations that were that were imagined as, maybe being necessary to get the green space numbers, in line. So I guess my question is, it would be helpful to actually be able to have some of those conversations in a more informed way. And I understand that the next gate here is sort of having, kind of continuing in this process with them. There's this still nagging thing in the back of my mind of like, there are other decisions and questions that this community is going to have about that site. Like the trade-off between that and Newberry, or the trade-off between, town offices there or somewhere else, or beeps. And so I guess I'm still a little bit confused or stuck, or maybe other people are clear on how much does this kind of lock us in to a 4-section school versus some of these other important needs that we're trying to understand.
So, Susan, just so that you're aware, it's the 4-section school plus plus. So there's 3 beeps that are included in this school, as you may be aware. There's also an English language learners program in the school. Where did you go, Susan? Oh, there you are. Thank you. There's an English language learners program there that will also be classrooms. So those are things that will also be in this building. I mean, just as we said with Driscoll and with the Coolidge Corner School, not one building can solve every problem in town. As much as we would like that, that's not what can do that. We do have to, though, in my opinion, continue to keep on the front burner the issues of a 9th school and Baker School. So the 4-part solution that Suzanne was talking about, I think, is still out there. Carla, I hear what you're saying. But I think, we have to serve the kids that are in the town, and we have to make sure that we're serving them appropriately. So I hate the fact that we have to have this meeting virtually. I really do.
Yeah.
I hate the fact that there are not the public here talking with us, because I know there are many opinions out there, and
Yeah.
I'm not sure what to do with that. And I don't, on the one hand, I don't know if we could wait till next week with MSBA to get back to them. I know they are also in flux. Whether they're even having their meeting in April is not clear to me. They already postponed the April SOIs until May. Have you heard anything more, Ben?
I have not heard anything about whether they're going to be postponed, but I imagine. Who knows?
Matt?
Yes, thank you. To Ben's point, we're trying to partner up with the state. They're offering us a 4-section school, and to cut into the numbers really quickly, they're saying that we're going to have 530 kindergartners next year. That's the MSBA projection. Looking at the Cropper projection, which is page 28 of their projection.
530 across the system, you mean?
Across the system. The Cropper projection has us at 626. 8 of the last 9 years, we've been over 600 students. If we go forward during the feasibility phase, we're going to have our enrollment next fall. And I think they would consider, if their numbers are way off, if we have over 600 students again, just drawing a line in a round number, that they might reconsider, what size Pierce should be or not. But I think we'd at least have a conversation with them, because, their projection is kind of the foundation of their analysis for what they give us.
Matt's right about that. I do have one question, and maybe Helen or Susan or others might know. With Devotion at that point, I know they revised their enrollment at some point.
Well, it took so long that we changed it over the time that it
I wasn't sure if it would, did that happen after initial enrollment letter, or did that happen just because other factors that we took a while to get the thing?
I don't remember. I don't remember. I'm
I
sorry.
think maybe, can I just ask this as a different way to ask the same question, which is to say, look, the future is uncertain. We are all very concerned about costs. We're all concerned about the economy and what's happening and what's going to happen in the next 2 quarters, and where this might be going. So we want to future proof. We want to be responsible. And so, you know, are they telling us that this can only be drawn as a 4-section school or 4++, and that's it? Or, as Matt has suggested, as we're talking now, is there some flexibility to say, look, what if we were to use this for other things also? Clearly, MSBA would not reimburse for those things. They're very clear about that. But would they prevent us from doing it? Would they? I think that figuring this out as a partnership. I don't want to stop the process. What I'd love to have is an answer that said, yeah, we're committed to continuing to work with you through some of these different options, I guess.
It would just be my belief that that's part of feasibility, is answering some of those questions or making a determination of which direction to proceed in next.
Yeah, I would be wary of expecting it. Very
Well,
wary.
I'm not optimistic that they're going to allow us to change course, but I think that they would be remiss if they said that there was absolutely no chance of changing course. Like, I think they have to look at the data and see where things are going.
Well,
And
but
site investigation and all the other things they go through on the checklist of feasibility of building a new school. And one of those things is going to be the vote as to whether or not the community wants a 4-section school.
right. So, one of the things that I think we need to keep in mind, the 725 was based on our 21 kids per classroom. They normally reimburse for 23 kids per classroom and 21 in kindergarten. For us, they have adjusted it to 18 and 21, but according to that, there's like 300 more seats capability, is according to their numbers. I think we have a choice. We accept it or we say no thank you and we go back to the drawing boards with them. I don't think they're going to move, but I could be wrong. And I wish Ben were here. Ben?
I don't think they'll move easily either, Helen.
That's my sense. I don't know. Mary Ellen, what is your sense? You've spoken to them too, and you're on mute.
They're pretty stuck, rigid. I have to agree with Matt. They're not going to they're not going to allow for additional 9 classrooms or on our dime. They're they're pretty rigid. So.
That is.
All I heard was the F-bomb.
Yes, Suzanne.
So, what kind of money are we talking about from the state? What would that money be if we were to turn it down?
Well, it depends how much the cost of the building is.
I know, but
Ben, say it again.
It's 25 to 30% of the whole project. I'm not sure if that all costs, all in costs, but you think about something that right now Driscoll is $19 million. You're looking, if it was comparable, and maybe it'll be higher because of the escalation, we assume, unless you're looking at somewhere in the I'm saying $40 million, something like that. Is that Mary Ellen and Matt? Am I saying right here?
No, 30 to $40 million seems about right. It's probably going to be about a 30% reimbursement. They don't reimburse for site costs.
So that's not
they reimburse for the designer, the OPM, and I'll call it the box, the actual construction.
And a big part of the cost of this will be if we have to rebuild, so people are aware, if we have to rebuild the garage, that will be a huge cost there.
I mean, it's not an insignificant amount of money.
No,
It's a significant amount of money. I mean,
it's the fire station that Carla wants. Yes, Carla. Carla, and then
I think it's the fire station.
Barbara, did you have your hand up? You'll be next after Carla. Yes.
I think it's the fire station that probably everybody wants. I would just, my past experience watching Sean Cronin tear out his hair over MSBA reimbursements way back when, and Melissa more recently, I think it's much better to go by a dollar figure than by a percentage, because my recollection is that the MSBA, when it comes to the actual reimbursement, they nickel and dime you to death. So that's one point. The other point is, I don't think politically or in any other way you could afford to walk away from any MSBA participation. You know, it's become a drumbeat. You know, over the past couple of years, a lot of weeping and wailing about, you know, I shouldn't use that term, a lot of consternation about why we didn't go for MSBA reimbursement for the high school in Driscoll. And if by saying, yes, we're going to do a three-prong approach, and one of those prongs is Pierce with MSBA assistance, there is no way I see being able to change your mind, to pivot. Just don't think it works.
Thank you. Are you done? Okay, Barbara,
Thank you.
and then Susan.
Yeah, I wonder, we're talking about what they will allow. Suppose we accepted the feasibility study, and then we decided that we did not want a 4-section school, but wanted a 5-section school. Would they still give us the money, but we would have to pay for the rest of it? Is that a possibility?
You know, I don't know for a fact, but my sense, and Mary Ellen, you can correct me if I'm wrong, it's a different school that you would build at 5 than at 4.
Very
Somebody's giving feedback here. I don't know who, maybe it's me.
But could you request a 5-section school after we had worked with them, even though they still said 4, and get them to agree to it so that the design would be the correct design for a 5-section school, but we would get their allotment of money, although it would not be as much as we would have liked?
Well, I think you're saying the same thing Susan said before. Mary Ellen, do you want to speak to that?
I'm sorry, I got distracted with papers flying at me at EUC. What was the question?
The question, go ahead, Barbara.
Is if we went into this feasibility period,
Barbara, we can't hear you.
if we went into this feasibility and we disagreed with them about the number of classrooms we needed, would they be at all flexible in terms of contributing their money and then letting us, I mean, we would have to pay for it, I understand that, but letting us do a bigger school than they thought they wanted? Would they allow that? I'm not saying would they agree to it later. I'm saying would they allow it later?
No. We asked that question, and Ben and Matt can confirm, but we asked that question and they said no.
Yeah, and I think the reason they said no to that question is then you have to build a bigger cafeteria, kitchen, library, gym. It's not just adding like classrooms onto the building. They view it as a pretty much a whole redesign. So, you know, their initial answer was no. In all likelihood, their second answer would be no. But, you know, I guess if we got to that point and we thought that was the right thing to do, we'd at least ask the question again. We're just not optimistic they would give us the answer we would like.
Susan.
So I think that I totally understand the difference between a 4-section and a 5-section school. That does make sense to me about all the common spaces that you really would build something potentially different. At the same time, I think, again, not to beat a dead horse, but there are other things that we may want to do on that site. And so I guess, as I remember, there was a conversation about, there was a high school that wanted a pool and the MSBA said, no, we're not going to reimburse for the pool or whatever it was. And so they built it on their own dime. And then there was this whole back and forth about whether MSBA was going to pull all the funding from the project because they had picked an additional thing to do on their own dime. I also know, though, that, we know that they, didn't want to pay for the garage for CCS. And I mean, we've been in this conversation multiple times with them, or we've heard about it. So I think it would just be helpful to understand those parameters. Because at the end of the day, I mean, whether or not it's a 4-section school for a 5-section school, for sure we need beep space. For sure we need, town hall space. And so I guess I'm just still a little bit stuck on, is that all we can put on that footprint? Or are they willing to have a conversation with us about 9 beep classrooms or staff room, whatever that is? Or is that just such a non-starter that we can't even talk about it? I think that's where I'm still trying to wrap my head around.
Ben, Mary Ellen,
I can actually speak to what Susan just brought up with the pools. I know that was in the city of Lowell, and originally they had told Lowell that no, they will not pay for it, thinking that it was a part of the entire building. Back to Matt's point is that they only want to pay for a certain box. So the city of Lowell decided, yes, they're going to build a pool on their own dime, but it's a separate building. Okay, so it doesn't affect the size of that box that they're paying for. And so they had no problem with that for that project. My opinion is right now is that I think we stick with a 4-section school. We take the money that we can get from them and then pivot and look elsewhere in the future for expanding another school. I know Lawrence has a lot of playground space there.
well, that's Article 97. But let me stop you there, Rob, if I could. I think one of the things that people should look at is the MSBA letter itself. So the actual thing that we sign, the letter, there's a letter and then there's the design enrollment certification. I don't know if you have it in your packet there somewhere that Robin sent out yesterday, I think.
It's the last page in the MSBA letter.
The letter to Chairman Green, Chair Green, is the last page of that.
Right, and it says very clearly, the town of Brookline further acknowledges and agrees pursuant to some law, the MSBA shall determine the square foot per person allowance and the total square footage for a K through 8 school serving 725 students in grades K through 8. The town of Brookline acknowledges and agrees that it has no right or entitlement to any particular design enrollment, square feet per student space allowance, or total square footage, and that has no right or entitlement to a design enrollment any greater than 725, and further acknowledges and agrees that it shall not bring any, well, that's, we're not going to sue them.
Yes, it was written by an attorney.
Yeah, this is written by an attorney, but it basically says that they have the final approval of the proposed project as John Pearson shall be within the sole discretion of the MSBA. I mean, I don't know. I'm sort of a little stuck. It's 5:20 now, and I guess my sense is from our conversation and the people who were on the conversation, Ben and Mary Ellen and Matt, and Rob, I think you were there too. I didn't see any leeway here. We pushed in many different ways.
We're not going to get any leeway until further down the road, and we know that there's not a lot of chance we're going to get leeway further down the road.
So
either we're in or we're not.
So
that's just the way I see it.
Yeah, Suzanne.
Well, I would like to move that we are in, that I would like the subcommittee, if we could, take a vote to I don't know exactly what the wordage is, but
Recommend to the school committee.
yeah, recommend to the school committee that we support the enrollment letter, if that's what we need to do. You could take a straw vote first if you want, but I think as a committee, perhaps we should move forward and then bring it to the whole committee.
So I actually agree with you, but I would like to add to that if you'd be willing to accept.
Sure.
In that recommendation, that we continue our, well, I would say four-prong approach, Driscoll, Pierce, Ninth School, and Baker, and through the next, 5 to 10 years, accomplish our goal of making sure that there are adequate and appropriate spaces for all students in Brookline.
Okay, so moved.
Second, Barbara. Can't hear you. No, Barbara, you have to unmute. Sorry. So yeah, I don't know what you were saying.
I'm abstaining.
Okay. All right. I think the one thing that we do, that both this group and the other group has to remember, the MSBA can put us on hold if they don't feel there's good support for going forward. And, that's up to the community. It's up to the school committee to determine how important the monies and the project that they're proposing that we sign on to them is. And I think we should think long and hard about this. So
I think the voters are going to get a chance to decide anyway. I think my recommendation to the school committee is to support it, go forward and see what happens.
Any other comments? Okay, we have about 8 minutes left. Do we want to go on?
Helen, aren't you voting?
I thought you said you abstained. Susan said yes, and I said
abstained.
yes.
I didn't hear anybody else say anything.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I thought
Yeah, Suzanne, not Susan. I'm not on this committee.
Suzanne, I'm sorry. It was Suzanne. Susan's not on the committee. So should we take another vote? Robin, did you get that? Robin?
I did, yes. So it was, you can vote. I know you made the motion and then Suzanne seconded it and then Barbara abstained. But if you want to formally vote, yes, you can do that. Helen and Suzanne.
I can vote yes.
I vote yes.
And Barbara?
Abstain.
Okay. All right. So I think, unless anybody has any other comment about this, we should move forward and finish the last item quickly if we can, or if not, carry it on. It probably will be carried on anyways because it's a work in process. But I don't know if Matt or Rob is talking to this about the moves. Or Ben, go ahead.
Let me just give you a basic background here, a basic overview, because you may have heard we're in a global pandemic, and that has preempted some of the basic work we've done on this. So let me say that first. Let me also say that Matt and Rob have been doing great work on this to sort of map out a plan for how we're going to do it and who we're going to move and what office we have to move and what time schedule and how, and they're moving into Baldwin. So, but what we haven't done enough of yet at this point is really sort that through with the folks who will be most directly involved. Okay.
So maybe we should hold off on this right now with everything else. Maybe it can wait till the next meeting.
I would prefer that. What I just want to assure the school committee members, 1 second, sorry, that we are actively working on this. We have, Rob and Matt are all over it. We're making good plans, concrete plans, timelines. So want to assure you that we're doing quite well. When things happened last week, as we were going to, sort of pull in those folks, Clark Road and Asperber specifically, and say, this is where our plans are now, give us some input. We just haven't done that yet. So, but I do want to assure you.
I would prefer to wait till our meeting in April and discuss it then.
Great. And
Thank you.
presumably we'll be further along.
Yes.
We don't all get sick.
Well, let's
Yeah.
hope not. Everybody needs to stay healthy.
Great. I appreciate that a lot.
Okay, I think that's a good idea. I was going to hold it anyways, just to give people some time between this meeting and the next meeting. So that's fine. Is there any new or old business that people want to discuss?
No, we should put the virtual sandwich on the agenda for these meetings that go 4 to 6 and then right into school committee.
The virtual sandwich.
The virtual sandwich.
Great idea, Matt. Okay, well, yeah. Who said
Oh, no, I'm sorry. That was my stomach grumbling.
Oh, okay.
Trying to figure
Bon
out
appetit, everybody.
how I'll get some food before school committee starts.
See you at 6. Okay. Bye-bye. Oh, there's your friend.
Oh, that looks good.
It really helps a lot. Yeah, that helps a
Are you
lot.
sharing there? Okay, Ben,
All
you
right,
can take us off now.